Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a video explaining and demonstrating a mod which I consider a vital addition after spending nearly 3,000 hours in game to any privately hosting servers due to its time saving capabilities. So without further ado, let's explain what KindredLogistics is first. This is a mod that provides players with multiple expansive features for storage and automation. Briefly noting, the server must have this installed by an admin on the server itself, otherwise the mod will not work. The player does not need to have this mod installed to take advantage of its features. Here is a brief rundown of all of the commands you can enable, depending on what the admin allows to be configured and used. Let's start with KindredLogistics' first feature, stashing. What this feature does is deposit items into storages which already have the matching item inside of them. There are two ways to execute this command. The first is to use the good old .stash command in chat. The alternative, more convenient way is to enable the .logistics sortstash command. This will allow you to simply double click the sort button in your inventory through the mouse keys or a key binding on your keyboard for sorting to automatically execute this command. Now, let's say that you have items in your inventory that you don't want to stash. For most players, that will usually be health pots or dust coolers. There is a way to prevent this from happening. All you have to do is rename a container with 2 apostrophes at the end of its name. One thing to note about stashing is that it will ignore items that you don't already have inside of containers. That could be things like fish, jewels, shattered weapons, books, cosmetic hats, or capes. Currently, as far as I'm aware, there is no way to force these items into a container and have to be manually handled. Last note for stash is that you can enable .logistics silentstash in order to prevent the chat from being filled up with a list of items that were stashed into your storage. This prevents you from missing a conversation, but also leaves chat less cluttered with command lines. Next, we have craftpull. Personally, I believe this feature is redundant in the latest version of V-Rising 1.1, also known as Invaders of Oakvale patch. Main reason being is that the game already has this mostly built in and behaves in a very similar manner. What craftpull does is that it allows you to right click on an item that you want to craft from a crafting station, and it will pull the items required for the recipe directly into your inventory. With V-Rising 1.1, the crafting stations utilize the castle storage when crafting items, as long as the containers are inside a treasury room. If you decide to use craftpull, consider enabling the logistics silentpull in order to prevent the chat from being filled with command lines when pulling multiple items to craft, for instance 50 health potions. Following on from that, dontpulllast is pretty self-explanatory. This turns on or off your personal ability to not pull the last item from a container. This is only used in conjunction with craftpull, which, like I have outlined earlier, is redundant in V-Rising 1.1 due to treasury rooms. Now we move on to helpful automation features. The first to outline is autostashmissions. This command enables your servants to deposit items that they hunt for automatically into your storage, very similarly to how a player stashes their items. One feature that has been implemented into autostashmissions is that your servants can actually deposit non-matching items into a container that is named spoils that involves items like books and fish usually. Finally, we can look at the next command, salvage. This is very simple. It enables two things to happen. The first being is that if you toss an item into the devourer, with the resulting items being stashed into matching storage. The second, also handy feature, is to name a container with the name Salvage for items inside to be automatically sent to the devourers, allowing you to have big bulks of items devoured, which for me tends to be jewels that don't have good rolls. Moving on from this, we have the Conveyor feature, which is a long section. This is a better version of automation as compared to what Stunlock Studios provided players with through the use of the redistribution engine. With this command enabled, you have to link up storage and refinement stations which have the matching names assigned to them. Here's a quick overview of what the names are associated with. S with numbers assigns to sending items, R with numbers assigns to receive items. In order to make this conveyor system work properly, you must assign a matching name for a container and refinement station. This can be made either simple or complicated depending on how you prefer to automate things and how you selectively want to automate. I will now demonstrate my setup and how I manage my base in most instances. So as you can see, my storage containers are named with both sending and receiving numbers, meaning that the storage will, for instance, send items from my material storage, which has S1, which corresponds to send 1, assigned to it, to any station which has the matching R1/receive 1 name associated with them. I then have the refinement station that I want to send materials into the refined material storage, named S10, which corresponds to send 10, with matching storage named R10, which corresponds to receive 10. So I want to go over why I have storage set up with different names. You can always simply name everything S1, R1 resembling send 1, receive 1. However, I have found that all my materials were getting refined, which includes multi-purpose materials such as mutant grease, grave dust, scourge stones, and blood essence. I have now selectively assigned the storages to resemble materials and metals as the numbers 1 and 10, alchemy to be assigned as 2 and 20, tailoring and plant to 3 and 30, and lastly gems to 4 and 40. Another reason why I don't use S1 R1 on everything is that it will transfer items between one another, which caused me problems when I needed to collect scourge stones but were being transferred from the furnace into the stone grinders instead of the storage. Next, unit spawner is an automation of sending items from a chest named spawner to nearby spawning stations such as the vermin nest, tombs, and summoning circle. Most servers I have encountered have this turned off server-wide by admins, as it allows you to non-stop summon blood golems or banshees for raid defense, instead of having to do so manually while risking materials being pulled out if the doors are left open. I can't demonstrate this here as the server has this disabled. Furthermore, the Brazier command, fairly useless unless you're on a player versus environment server with sun exposed gardens. This allows you to name a container to Brazier, which automatically sends bones to all the Braziers inside the base as needed. The last command I will outline is the settings command. It simply displays any KindredLogistics features that have been turned on, and if they're not working, whether or not they are enabled or disabled by server admins. Bear in mind that these servers, apart from sortstash and silentstash and pull, only apply to the owner of the castle. This means that if another player decides to take over your castle in a squad, they will need to enable these commands themselves. Otherwise, they will not work and suddenly your castle will not automate itself. In the middle of filming, I realized that there was my favorite spot in Decay, and I decided to move and relocate there, which was a great chance for me to actually showcase the mod in action. So here it is. So obviously I've relocated. I haven't placed everything because I didn't have sufficient enough structures in order to place them. However, the majority of the work was done in order to get the basic structure down and to provide the proof of concept in regards to what KindredLogistics can provide to you if you are doing such a thing like relocation. So here I have relocated and I stash everything, and automatically the moment I do that, my entire castle just comes to life because every single station is now filled with materials that need to be refined, that will just bounce back and forth between containers and the refinement stations. And that concludes the rundown of KindredLogistics. I hope this helps clarify the systems you can use to automate your castles, free up time and frustration of dealing with so many items within the game. Now, go out there and hunt for blood.